Sunshines! I asked on Instagram stories what I should film because I needed another video, just kind of a chatting, talking video that I could post while I am in Disneyland for my birthday trip. I got a couple of responses. My friend Matthew recommended that I talk sort of about my poetry, my process, my experience, authors that I like, and books that I might recommend. So I'm going to talk about that. And then Elizabeth asked about NaNoWriMo and if I'm doing it this year, and if not, kind of why. So I thought I would combine those two videos and do a video that hopefully answers both. So yeah, okay. Out of all of the types of writing that I enjoy partaking in, I enjoy poetry the most, and I think that I am not the suckiest at poetry. I enjoy some of the things that I've written. So if people ask me what I am, I'm more likely to say I'm a poet than I am a writer. I have been writing poetry for a long time. As far back into my childhood as I can remember, I have been writing. I have some really silly, goofy books that I used to write and illustrate. Flower the Penguin. I'm not sure if I've shown that on this channel or not, but I've definitely talked about it before. And I wrote kind of contemporary stories about my life with my friends in my neighborhood. And then once NaNoWriMo became something I was aware of, I started participating in that, and I've participated in NaNoWriMo for almost every year since then, about 10, almost 11 years of NaNoWriMo. I haven't won all of those times, but I've definitely participated. But I have been writing poetry for almost just as long, and I dabbled with song lyrics back when my sister and I had a band, and I had my own ideas of becoming a musician. And all along, even though other types of writing has sort of ebbed and flowed in and out of my life, poetry has been a mainstay for me. So I have had a goal for at least the past 10 years of wanting to publish a book of my poetry. I think for today, for the poetry question, I'm going to start by reading you one of my poems that I haven't shared before, and then talk a little bit about my experience with poetry and my process of writing poetry, and maybe that will help or be interesting to you, or at least answer the question. So this is the collection of my poetry that I hope for one day to see the light of day. I don't write this way. I typically write on paper with pen, and I usually write in my journal, or I also have a book that I write only poems in. But for the past probably, at least 10 years, I have been working on a collection of my poetry in the hopes of one day publishing or self-publishing a book of my poetry. So that's what this is. This is the sort of printed out version. I'm just gonna find a poem and read it to you. So I'll read you two. This one is called Social Quips. Shiny lips, social quips, never do me right. Ruffled sheets and limousines fall into my sight. Hold me close and let me stay twined around your toes. Where you start and where I stop, what a grand unknown. Ruffled sheets, abandoned clothes, scattered on the rug. So I don't really remember when I wrote that one. I've taken all the dates out of these because when I actually put the book together, I don't want any dates in there. I just want it to be a collection of poems that I've been working on for the past 10 years. Some of them are a little dark, but then a lot of them are more playful and sort of, I think ethereal is a good word for them. So here's another one. Buzzless bees. Winter nights, summer kites, wind-blown hair. Rolling hills and captain's wills followed through with care. All the wingless hummingbirds, all the buzzless bees. Lonely howls, balding owls, separated we. I enjoy playing with punctuation and the structure of the poems themselves, so I'll insert maybe the visual of my poems on the side, the ones that I've read, because that actually means a lot to me when I'm writing. I am very conscious of where certain punctuation marks are. I really have affinities towards certain ones, like I really like semicolons and I really like em dashes, and I think that they're just visually punctuating in a way that I like to play with. I also kind of have always done that thing where I don't capitalize and I use all lowercase, and I know that's super hip right now in the Instagram poetry community, and it has been for a little while, but I've always done that. One of my early poetry influences was E.E. Cummings. I really was drawn to the way that they wrote and visually represented what they were writing. I think that the visual of poetry plays a big part in how people interpret it and how people read it. That's kind of just something I'm always keeping in mind when I'm writing. Okay, so this is probably one of my favorite poems that I've ever written. It's called Nightlife. I do believe in fairies and dance the night away. We fly and chase the raindrop dew until the break of day. When the moon is high and lit, the nightlife comes alive. Be careful where you step, my pet, for jesters gone awry. The queen on heightened glory soars, for iridescent eyes. Her praises ring melodious charms from gentlemen in ties. The courtier's prancing waltz erupts in trumpet cries. Children gulp down chocolate malts and want no Betty buys. And so begins a fairy scene as from the days of old, when children were entranced by such and the stories were retold. So when at next you see a gleam of diamond in the brush, know the joy of fay and queen is whispered with a hush. So that's probably one of my favorite ones that I've ever written. This is so personal to be talking about on the internet. I've never talked about my poetry before. I've never really read my poetry or put it out on the internet. I've definitely never talked about my process, but I've told a few people this in my real life, and so it makes sense that I could tell the internet. But along with those things, the visual representation of words and the poems themselves and punctuation and kind of how all those play into how I write, I have to write in silence because I usually read my poems out loud as I'm writing them. And the reason that I do that is because they sort of feel like writing a song to me. There's definitely a sing-song nature to the way that I write. The way that the words actually flow together and sound out loud is a huge part of my process. So I write in silence because, and like I have to be by myself too, because I need that complete and utter brain silence where I can just focus in and say words out loud and say the poem out loud as I'm writing it. So that is definitely the most crucial part of my process when I'm writing poetry. Like I said, this is a collection of poems that I have been pulling together into one place over the past 10 years, which is incredible. I was in a huge dry spell for the past like 4 or 5 years, and I finally got out of that and have been writing a lot lately. So there's a ton of new poems that I'm starting to pull into this collection, and I think I have a good amount. Like I think I have enough that I could put together a collection of poetry, and that is something that I really, really want to do and have wanted to do for a really long time. It's just kind of something that I know before I die, I have to publish a book of my poetry. I know that a lot of poets are getting published by more mainstream outlets in this day and age, but I don't know the first thing about going out there and starting that process, so I think I'm going to start by self-publishing. Anyway, that kind of might lead into the NaNoWriMo question, and then I'll come back around to authors that I enjoy and book recommendations that I have. Last year I did NaNoWriMo in a non-traditional way. I decided that every day I wanted to write a poem. This year I did no thinking about NaNoWriMo at all. I've been in a really kind of weird, funky headspace, and I've had so much going on that I haven't even had time to think about NaNoWriMo, much less anything else. Last year I did that, and it mostly worked. I wrote a lot of poems that month, but this year I'm not doing NaNoWriMo in a traditional way. I'm not really even participating on the site, and I'm not really participating, and that might change because I have definitely decided a week into NaNoWriMo that I want to get involved and then started. I said by the end of October I wanted to have the groundwork laid for my book to be published, and October has come and gone. I want to have this book ready to publish by the end of November. And so I think to answer that question about whether I'm doing Nano or not, and if not, why, I am not doing NaNoWriMo in the traditional way that most people do NaNoWriMo. I'm not really participating in NaNoWriMo itself, but I am participating in the idea of NaNoWriMo, which is to use this month as a forcing function to achieve a goal, whether that's getting 50,000 words on a page, writing a novel, or in my case, getting the guts together to publish this book of poetry I have had on the back burner for upwards of 10 years. So no, I'm not participating in NaNoWriMo in that way, but I am participating in the spirit of NaNoWriMo this month because I've decided that now, instead of October, since that's over now, I'm going to make the end of November my deadline to get this collection together, to start having my beta readers read it and figure out what the art direction is and all of that stuff. So I hope that answers that question about NaNoWriMo. I love NaNoWriMo. I look forward to it every year. I don't think this is my year to write a novel, so maybe next year will be my year to dive back into the novel world. I also really enjoy short story writing. Like, short story writing and poetry are my two happy places when it comes to writing. I also enjoy writing song lyrics, but I think that's because I enjoy poetry a lot, but I just don't know how to play music, so I've never done anything with my lyrics. But yeah, so the whole 50,000 word novel thing, I don't know if it's for me. I have had more success, like personal feelings of success, when I have written poetry and when I've written short stories. So a short story collection is another thing that I might do down the road because I have a few of those written as well. But anyway, that's a whole lot of things about NaNoWriMo, and I hope that that answers your question about NaNoWriMo, and I hope that I answered the question a little bit about my process with poetry. Without further ado, I want to dive into the other half of this question, the poetry question, which is what are some authors that you enjoy, as well as what are some books that you recommend. So kind of all poetry, like throughout the ages. I really enjoy E.E. Cummings, mostly for the visual aspect of the way that they write, and then I really enjoy Emily Dickinson. I used some of her poems for monologues back when I was in school and doing theater and stuff like that, and I really enjoy her writing. So those are a couple poets that I've enjoyed kind of like throughout time and the ages, and more traditional poets, but I also have a ton of poets that I really connect with on a deep level and enjoy their work a ton on Instagram. I don't know how many of you are into the Instagram poetry scene, but it's been exploding lately, so that's cool. And a lot of these poets are mostly poets that use Instagram as their platform, but they've also self-published or been published and have books as well. So I'm just gonna read some off of my list. I'll start with my favorites, like my absolute favorites. I love Wilder. Her Instagram name is @WilderPoetry. Wilder is a poet that connects with my soul on an exceptionally deep level. She writes very nature, very ethereal, very, I don't even really know how to describe it, but I just love her work so much. It's always so timely, it hits me right in the soul, and I just connect with it so deeply. I also love Atticus. His username is Atticus Poetry, and Atticus is a poet that has really ended up kind of mainstream. A lot of celebrities love Atticus. Wild following book tours, but he never shows his face. He's an anonymous poet, and I think that's really interesting. But again, with this sort of soul connection, the way that he writes, I feel myself in his poems a lot of times. I feel safe and vulnerable and protected and kind of all of those things all at once. And I feel heartbreak when I read Atticus and Wilder. I feel heartbreak for other people who feel the way that those words are, and I also feel heartbreak for myself because there are so many that I have bookmarked in my Instagram because of just connecting with them in a very real way that just breaks my heart and makes me want to cry because that's how I feel. And that's amazing. That's super powerful. Those are like two of my all-time favorite poets. Other like super faves are Faraway, who is @faraway poetry, and Gemma Troy, who is @Gemma Troy Poetry on Instagram. They both have a super playful nature, fantasy, fairy tale approach as well, and I really like both of them. Other poets, Rupi Kaur, I think is how you say her name. I don't know how to say her name, but it's @Rupi Kaur _ on Instagram. She's written Milk and Honey, so a lot of people know her from that. I haven't finished Milk and Honey, though I do own it, and I enjoy a lot of her work. There are definitely poems that I relate to more than others, whereas with the other four I mentioned before, almost every poem I just go, oof, wow, too. There's a reaction that I have where I don't always with her, but I really enjoy her style. A few others that I really enjoy are Perry Poetry, who is @Perry Poetry, Komal Kapoor, who is @Komalesque on Instagram, Wildflower Poetry, who is @wildflower.musings, Michaela Angemeer, who is @michaelapoetry on Instagram. Those are some poets that I really enjoy on Instagram, and as far as book recommendations go, most of them are related to those people. This one I picked up because I saw it in Barnes & Noble and it looked interesting. It's called The Princess Saves Herself in this one, and it's by Amanda Lovelace. She also has another book out that just came out. I got it at Target. I think it's called The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, or something like that. It has a red cover. I got it at Target. The red cover might be exclusive to Target, I'm not sure. But I really enjoy this book. It's definitely more of a like real life kind of real experiences, and I do enjoy it, but I didn't like devour it, if you will. I've had to kind of take that one in stages. And the other two are by two poets that I mentioned earlier as being like my favorites. And this is The Dark Between Stars by Atticus, and this is, I believe, his most recent collection of poetry. I love the way that this book is laid out. It's It's like a literal vision and interpretation of what I have had in my head for as many years as I've been planning to write a poetry book. I wanted to do my photographs combined with poems, but I have new ideas now and I'm just not sure. So I love, 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 love all of his stuff. I can never go wrong with him. And then this is like my most prized poetry book probably that I've ever owned, ever. And it is Wild Is She by Wilder. I super didn't expect it to be this big, but I'm not mad because it's beautiful. Wow, it's amazing. I hope that that answers your questions, you guys. Thank you for kind of sparking me to go to this place on this platform that I love so much to talk about something else that I love so much. Super deeply personal to me, but because I really want to publish this book of my poetry, I gotta put it out there, you know? Let me know if you would want to hear more of my poetry. Should I make more videos about it? Should I post it to Instagram? Should I publish a book of my poetry? Like, would you guys read it or buy it? That's a real question that I have. Like, is that a real thing? Like, I gotta do it for me, but are other people interested in it? You know, that's like a whole nother question. Thank you both Matthew and Elizabeth for kind of sparking this conversation, and I hope that this video was interesting to both of you and to everyone else who's watching. Thank you again for watching and listening. I will talk to you guys in my next video, and until then, stay sunny. Bye!